Why isn't everybody buying the GTD? Hello and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now, in the 3 years since the Mk8 Golf was launched, I've driven nearly every performance derivative there is. GTI 245, GTI Club Sport R, R20 years, and even the GTE Hybrid. But there's one version that has thus far eluded me, and it's a version you could say suits most people's needs the best. It is, of course, the diesel drinking GTD. The GTD is a great match for the GTI 245 when it comes to performance, yet it's way better on fuel, it's cheaper to finance, and the list price is usefully lower, which means you can spec it how you want it without encountering the dreaded luxury car tax. So why isn't everybody buying the GTD? Well, in today's video, we're hopefully going to find out. I'm going to give you a tour of the outside and the inside of this brand new GTD, and then we're going to go for the usual thorough Volks Wizard test drive to find out if there's actually a problem with the GTD, or whether it's more to do with, as some might say, unjustified negative reporting that diesel cars have been receiving in the media over the past few years. Now, it's that time in the video where I'd like to remind you guys how you can support the channel. The easiest way to do that is, of course, just to subscribe. But there is another way that can possibly benefit us both, and that's to give me the opportunity to pay more for your car. The dealer I'm working with is looking for the following models: Mk8 Golf GTI Club Sport Edition 40 and Mk8 Golf GTI Club Sport S, Mark 7.5 GTI Performance and TCR. In all cases, cars must be unmodified, have a full service history, be in really good condition, and have average mileage or below. Now, if you've got something interesting that doesn't conform to those requirements, then give us a try as well. For example, a really low mileage, full history Mark 4 Golf R32 or Mark 5 Golf R32, we wouldn't say no to that, or a really nice Edition 30 even. Best way to get in touch with me is via email, andrew@volkswizard.co.uk. Now, before we have a closer look at this GTD, let's just see how it compares with the GTI 245 on paper, starting with the price. The GTD today is £37,160. The GTI 245 is £39,575. Both are only available now with the 7-speed DSG automatic gearbox and front-wheel drive. The GTD's got 200 metric horsepower. The GTI 245 has got 245. The 0 to 62 time of the GTD is 7.1 seconds. The GTI is nearly a second faster at 6.2, but when it comes to in-gear acceleration, which is what you do much more than standing starts, it's going to be a lot closer than the figures might suggest. Top speed of the GTD is 152 miles an hour versus 155 for the GTI. Torque, well, diesels have always been really good. This one's got 400 Newton meters of torque between 1,750 RPM and 3,500 RPM. The GTI's got a smidgen less at 370 Newton meters, but it's got it over a broader rev range from 1,600 to 4,300 RPM. Fuel economy, well, diesel's forte, isn't it? GTD is 54.4 combined, while the GTI is 40.4, so that's a good chunk better, and CO2 emissions reflect that. GTD is 136 grams per kilometre, GTI was 160. By the way, those figures are for cars with 18-inch wheels. Weight, well, actually, I always thought diesels would be quite a chunk heavier than the equivalent petrol. GTD is 1,466 kilograms versus 1,451 for the GTI 245. Right now, let's take a look at the options fitted to this particular GTD. Okay, so instead of standard white, we've got dolphin grey paint, £730. We've got the 19-inch Adelaide wheels and sport suspension, which is a package, £820. We've got the rear camera, which works with the standard front and rear parking sensors, £330. We've got the winter pack, £315. So this car has a list price with options of £39,355, which you'd think would mean you've only got £645 to go until you hit the luxury car tax threshold. But because the first year road tax isn't included in that, you've got an extra £255 to play with, which means you can spec DCC, dynamic chassis control, which is £875, and still be £25 short of paying luxury car tax. Now, this brand new GTD is probably in the 4th year of production, and yet nothing out here has changed since the original launch cars. There's a couple of bits inside different we'll talk about when we do the interior. But if you want external changes, you'll have to wait until the facelift, which is due next year, and I can't wait to report on that for the channel. Now this car's in my new favourite colour, Dolphin Grey. If I'd seen this when I got my Club Sport, I would have definitely gone for this colour. It's got the 19-inch Adelaide wheels, which really do set it off. Not only are they bigger that way, but they're wider, so they fill the arches better, and you get more rubber on the road. So the 18s come with 225 wide tyres. These are 235 Bridgestones in this case, and you get these little wing extenders as well. I was going to say, being a GTD, there's no red, but I'd be lying. We've got red calipers, which really liven up this otherwise quite subdued exterior. So at the front, there's no red. We've got silver instead. We've got the light bar. We've got the X-shaped fog lights, which the GTI 245 gets. So yeah, it's pretty much identical to a GTI, as GTDs always have been. They're just lacking the red highlights. We've got the unpainted sill extensions, just like a GTI. We've got the dagger badges, which again are missing the red. We've got the standard spoiler, not the bigger one from the GTI Club Sport or R Performance Pack. The big difference with the GTI is the exhaust. So the GTI gets bigger exhausts at one either side of the number plate, really. On the GTD, we've just got these two together, but it still looks great, and they're a bit staggered, which I don't think I've seen that before. I don't think Mark 7's like that. There's a bit of a diffuser going on down there, but yeah, it's, in my eyes, a very nice bit of design that I think has got nicer as the cars have got older. Of course, we haven't got red badges either. We've just got a silver GTD one there. LED tail lights. It is worth mentioning the headlights. For the UK market, we're very lucky to get these as standard. These are IQ Light LED Matrix, and they're the best headlights I have ever driven with. I commuted for 18 months in my Club Sport, and these are amazing. You get auto main beam as standard as well, which really makes them even better. Okay, now let's have a look at the inside. Okay, firstly, let's talk about what's changed in here since the launch, because it's very unusual for Volkswagen to change stuff aside from a facelift. So we have got Alcantara microfiber and leatherette here instead of plain grey cloth, which was probably more just like that, which looks a lot nicer. We've also got leatherette here, which again replaces, I think, a cloth like this. But the biggest change is the centre console. Before, this was a matte grey plastic. Now it's a big slab of shiny piano black. I know it's vulnerable to scratches. In fact, there are a couple on there already. But trust me, it does feel a lot more expensive in here. It's great that Volkswagen have listened to the complaints and dealt with this before next year's facelift. So we've got the bucket seats, which feature on all the performance Golfs, even the R line. These don't have any red, but they are the tartan fabric. It's actually called scale paper. Yeah, I didn't know that. Contrast stitching, which ties in with the floor mats. It's a bit plain down here, no ambient lighting, no sill protectors, but we do have ambient lighting in the doors under here, and we've got this nice inlay that goes right across the dash. Stainless pedals. Now, nothing has changed the user interface. Volkswagen didn't listen to complaints there. They could have illuminated this bit, but I think they just want to change this completely for the facelift, so we'll see what happens with it. But I'm assured by the owner of this car, who's done nearly 900 miles in it, it all works perfectly, and she's moved here from a 7.5 29 GTD, so yeah, she knows what a good car should be like. So we've got black A-pillar trim, black roof lining for that sporty feel. And we've got heated seats, which I didn't have on my car, which is a nice, very nice touch. So this is mega configurable. There's so much you can do. There's no reason to look in the menus for stuff like some media publications might make you think you can just set them as shortcuts in here, and everything can be just one slide away. For example, traction control, if you use that on a regular basis. Obviously, we've got the 10 point something inch DIC, digital instrument cluster. and you can play around with that as well. Got the haptic buttons on here, they're still there. But yeah, trust me, you get used to them and you can kind of use them without messing everything up or putting the heated steering wheel on by mistake, which a lot of people do. GTD on here. I think that's it for GTD, apart from obviously on the rev counter, because it doesn't go up as far as the petrol one as well, so it's a bit different to that of a GTI. But yeah, I haven't been in. Oh, I've got blind spot warning as well, which I think was deleted off later cars, but that's a really nice touch. Does it self-test? Yeah, there we go. So that's a really nice safety feature. So yeah, it's been well over a year since I have last been in a Mark 8, and it's really interesting to come back to it. I've driven here in a Mark 7 today, and I don't really miss the Mark 8 that much. I got on with the interior okay, but then I don't feel like I miss it when I get in cars that don't have it. You know, even my Cayman GT4, it's quite basic compared to this, but yeah, it works. And whilst you can learn how to use this efficiently with other cars, you just get in them and go. So let's see what the facelift brings. But my overriding memory of my Club Sport and actually other Mark 8s is how well they drive. So let's now go and pop my GTD cherry and yeah, take this GTD for a run. Well guys, it's great to finally drive a Mark 8 Golf GTD, and already a couple of miles in, I'm super impressed by quite a few things. Firstly, you cannot hear the diesel engine in this comfort mode with the fake sound turned off. It's super refined, it's quieter than the GTI, and that's good and bad. You might want a bit of noise, but when it comes to diesel, I think you probably don't want the noise. So I cannot believe how they have managed to produce this amount of performance and keep it so quiet, because the more bang from the diesel engine there is, the more noise there should be. So this is manual, pretty much full send, using the torque. It feels like an electric car, it's so quiet, and we're already doing big numbers. That was in 6th gear. So yeah, it's refined and it performs. It's got a lot of go. I'd say it feels like a faster than a GTI 245 for definite. Big thanks to Robbie from Instagram. He saved me the trouble of racing a Mark 8 Golf R. He's had a little play with them during his ownership of his Mark 8 GTD, and he reassured me it can keep up with them up to about 85 miles an hour. Clearly Robbie's been to Germany to test that out, but I have no doubt about that. This car feels so quick, and with this gearbox, it will change gear when it knows is best to get the most performance from the engine. Yes, it doesn't rev out that well, it's probably changes up at about 5,000 RPM, but then you've got another many gears to go. It's a 7-speed car, and at 60 it will do 1500 RPM. That's just above tick over, which is, it's crazy. And yeah, it'd probably feel a bit sluggish on the motorway in 7th gear, but the PDK will just, the DSG will just shift down for you, and yeah, this car will feel like a rocket. The steering, it feels pretty synthetic. I haven't driven one for a while, and I've just driven here in a Mark 7. It feels light at slow speeds, it weighs up at higher speeds, it's okay. The car feels sharp, so maybe it's progressive steering. But the torque, oh my god, that's just amazing, and it's so quiet. Of all the Mark 8s I've driven, this with its lack of noise and all that torque is the license buster. Honestly, it's yeah. Right, now let's talk about the ride. This car's on 19s and passive dampers, and it's got sports suspension bundled with the 19-inch wheels. So that could be a recipe for disaster. But actually, on this very imperfect road, it's firm, but it's not terrible. It's firm enough to make you think you're in a sporty car, which is always good in a diesel Golf, but it's not bangy or crashy. Would it be better with DCC? Well, almost definitely yes. Problem is now Mark 8 production is being wound down for the facelift, and models are being deleted. If you look at the Volkswagen configurator, GTD is only available from stock. So in the past I'd have said make sure you order DCC. Well, unfortunately you're going to have to try and find a stock car with it, and I imagine that's like a needle in a haystack, because it's not the kind of thing dealers or manufacturers would order for cars for stock, just because it doesn't have as much showroom appeal as 19-inch wheels or as a pan roof. But yeah, look on the used market for it. It's great, but if you can't find one, passive dampers and these 19s, it's a great looking car and it's still perfectly compliant. Brakes, well, I don't think they're anything special, but this is a modern car with modern technology, and it makes you feel a bit ill. Oh, I've just had my lunch and just had it again just then. Now, another little feature about the GTD that doesn't get much coverage is that it's got an auxiliary heater. So I grew up with Mark IV diesels and I got very cold in them, and if you wanted a lot of heat on a cold day, sometimes the engine would cool and you'd use more fuel, and it wasn't great. You just got wherever you wanted to get to, pretty miserable. Well, modern diesels have got electric heaters that warm the cabin up really quickly, so yeah, don't have to worry about that. So all the usual issues with diesels seem to be non-existent. It's not slow, it's not noisy, the cabin warms up. There is one little thing missing from the GTD, and that is the VAQ differential. So even the base GTI now, the GTI 245, gets a VAQ diff. That's basically held its coupling for the front axle. It doesn't let the one wheel spin all the power away like an open diff does. It locks the drive shafts together and gives you, well, it lets you spin both wheels in the case of most the higher powered two-wheel drive cars like the Club Sport. But yeah, we've just got the electronics, and there was a bit of wheel spin then on this dry day. So yeah, unfortunately, maybe it'll come with the next model, but there's no VAQ diff with the diesel, and that's a shame because of the amount of torque. It's going to wheel spin more than the petrol cars, especially the GTI 245. But I think they haven't done that because they think the GTD driver may not drive it in such a spirited way. But I think that's doing this car a disservice. It's a car you want to drive hard. So yeah, I'd love to drive one of these with a VAQ diff, but it's not, again, a deal breaker. Just get some good tyres. These Bridgestones are okay, but there are better tyres you can fit, and go for the 19 so you've got more rubber on the road. Let's now get on a dual carriageway and go a little bit faster, and then you can get a feel for how refined this car is on the open road, because that's where GTDs tend to spend most of their time. We're doing 70 miles an hour, just above tick over 1800 RPM. There's no engine noise, there's a little bit of tyre noise, but the surface is pretty good. Would it be quieter on 18s? Possibly. And I bet you at these kind of speeds you'll smash through that 54 miles per gallon combined figure. I reckon these will do easily above 60, and that's amazing for a car with this level of performance. Now if you want to accelerate, it might be a little sluggish at these kind of RPMs, but the superb DSG gearbox, which is standard, you can only have a GTD with it, will just change down for you. Although we're in manual mode now and it's still using all that torque. So yeah, there are no issues with performance. And when you come to a roundabout, you'll still have a lot of fun. I think roundabouts can be actually some of the most fun. So I still stand by my judgment. The Mark 8 is such a chuckable car. It's unbelievable. That felt incredible. If Volkswagen get the user interface right with the next one, and people can then concentrate on how great the Mark 8s drive, well, I think the general opinion of it in the media will be completely different, because I've forgotten how good these are. I've driven a lot of 7s and 7.5s recently, but there's just something about the chassis on Mark 8s, even on a diesel, that is, yeah, really, really exciting. So there's clearly nothing wrong with the Mk8 Golf GTD. Like most modern diesels, it will be a sensible choice for a lot of UK car buyers, and a modern EU6 emission standard compliant diesel that's all produced since 2015, and many since well before that, will emit less CO2 than a petrol car and be only marginally worse when it comes to local air quality. So why are UK diesel sales so low? Even with new car registrations up 20% during the year to date, due to the semiconductor supply improving, diesel sales are down 15%, making them well under 10% of all new cars registered, while petrol sales continue to account for well over 50%. Part of the reason for this will be the company car tax scheme, which previously incentivised diesels due to their lower CO2 emissions, but now promotes hybrids and pure electric cars. The other reason, though, is the unfairly negative and inaccurate reporting diesel cars are receiving in the media. I was surprised to learn that diesels as old as the 2013 Golf GTD can enter all the UK's current clean air zones without being charged, including London's ultra-low emission zone. I'd also read headlines about German cities banning diesel cars, but the devil is in the detail. Just like the UK's clean air zones, only older diesels are banned, while EU6 compliant diesels, such as every Golf GTD from 2013 onwards, which will be far and away the majority on the road, can drive without any restrictions. So if a diesel stacks up for you, then don't let the media put you off, and when you're done with it, due to so few being registered, there'll be a queue of eager buyers fighting over it thanks to the diesel engine's legendary durability. I'm pretty sure that won't be the case with a super complicated hybrid. Now, what really surprised me about the Mk8 Golf GTD when I was researching it was that, contrary to popular belief, it's actually better at retaining its value than the GTI and even the GTE if you go by Volkswagen's own guaranteed future value figures. And that means it's actually cheaper to finance. So for a 4-year PCP with 10,000 miles per year and a £5,600 deposit, the GTD works out at £50 per month cheaper than the GTI and £70 per month cheaper than the GTE. And if you like driving it so much you go over the 10,000 miles, well, actually the penalty you'll pay will be less per mile for the GTD than the other two, because when a GTD hits the used market, it's not so mileage sensitive. People still like to buy them with high mileage. The GTE really only makes sense if you're buying it as a company car, and that's all to do with benefit in kind tax. Now, if you're not a company car driver, this will mean nothing to you, but it's important because these people buy a lot of new cars. Now, in a nutshell, if you were to drive a GTD or a GTI as a company car, you would pay 3 times more benefit in kind tax than a GTE owner, and that can mean thousands of pounds per year. So unless you really don't want to drive a GTE, then if you've got a company car, just go and buy a GTE. For everybody else though, I think the GTD makes an awful lot of sense. Normally I'd say don't buy a diesel unless you do at least average mileage, ideally higher, but because it's cheaper to buy, which is unusual for a diesel, and it's cheaper to run, I'd say buy the GTD over the GTI. The only question is, can a modern DPF diesel handle urban driving? Will it get clogged up and cause problems like the early ones did? Well, I've not heard any bad reports. Why should you buy a GTI then? Well, if you do sort of low mileage, exclusively urban driving, and you get a burst from revving out a good petrol engine, then a diesel will never be able to replicate that, even when as good as the GTD. If you've got something in the garage that you can enjoy at weekends and get the thrill of driving from, then personally I'd go for the GTD as a daily over the GTI. Especially as you can spec it just like this car but with DCC and still be under the £40,000 luxury car tax, which I think is quite a big deal, because after year one you're paying hundreds of pounds more per tax, and you don't want to pay more than you have to if you're going to run a diesel. So yeah, the choice for me as a daily will most definitely be the GTD, and I promise you that's got nothing to do with giving Golf R owners I encounter on the road a hard time. No, most definitely not. As ever guys, thanks for watching this Volkswagen video. Keep subscribing, keep commenting, and I'll see you for the next one, maybe in Volkswagen related, very soon.